This is the video training for the Yard 1 Emergency Action Plan. Let's take a minute to look at the map of the facility. You can see in the yellow rectangles the locations of the various fire hydrants that are on the property. You can see in the blue rectangles the exits. If we need to do an emergency evacuation, the primary exit is the main gate by the scales. So we would exit through those gates, and then in the red rectangles, that is the evacuation meeting area where we would gather to make sure everybody is out of the facility. If for some reason the primary exit is blocked, we can use the secondary exit, which is the back gate near the truck wash area, or the gate crossing the railroad tracks near the KBMF building. The purpose of this plan is to prepare all employees in the event of an emergency so that they can remain calm and act in a safe manner. At Yard 1, Stan Radabaugh and Marty Levine have primary responsibility for implementing this plan. In the building materials area, Ben Lindsay and Richard Moore have responsibility for their buildings. In the event that Stan and Marty are not available, the most senior manager at the facility has full authority to implement this plan. Primary ways of reporting emergencies to authorities and to emergency responders is by calling 911. Be aware that if you're using a desktop phone, you must hit 9 first before you dial 911. That's very important to remember, because in the event of emergency, we can forget these things and just try and hit 911, and that will not work. Of course, just 911 from a cell phone does work. There are instances that must be reported to OSHA within 8 or 24 hours. When an emergency occurs, we're going to use voice commands for employees that we can see, radios to contact warehouse workers, operators, and drivers. We can also use radio and telephone to reach employees that are at the batch plant and at Concycle. In the event of a tornado warning, be aware that there are gathering areas at each building area of the facility. At Concycle, we do not have an area that we consider to be safe to gather. So, time permitting, you'd want to get to shelter at Yard 1. Time not permitting, you'd want to lay in a low-lying area of the property at Concycle. Should we have a weather event such as a blizzard or heavy storms, snowstorms, that result in level 3 or level 2, consult your supervisor as to whether or not you should report to work. We do have some employees, because we sell rock salt, that would need to report to work in a level 3. If a level 3 happens during work hours, consult your supervisor to see if you should remain at work. Medical emergencies, again, we're going to call 911 or 911 from a desktop telephone. Trained company personnel are authorized to use the automated external defibrillator located in the garage office on top of the file cabinet. If we don't have trained personnel available, Stan, Marty, Ben, or Richard will comfort any injured employee or visitor until an emergency response team can arrive. If you're interested in becoming trained in first aid and CPR, please see Steve Grau. The company will reimburse you for any training you get outside of company training. We have a fire, explosion, gas release, these types of things, chemical spills. If we can confine it to one part of the yard, we may not need to evacuate. We have fire extinguishers. Be aware of the fire extinguisher located closest to your work area so that you can access it quickly to address a fire that's safe to address in its very early stages. Should we have a chemical spill, consult the safety data sheet so that you can see what personal protective equipment is required to clean it up properly and dispose of properly. If there's any way for an employee to be injured cleaning up a spill, we're going to wait for emergency response teams. If we need to evacuate, if a fire has gotten too large to combat, if we do have a major chemical spill or an explosion, if we need to evacuate, look for your name in this plan to see if you have responsibilities in the event of evacuation. For instance, in the maintenance building, we have Tony, Jason, Brian that may need to shut down the electrical panels and close doors and windows, time permitting. In the batch plant area, Scott or Todd have responsibilities of things to shut down before we evacuate, time permitting. In the building materials area, Ben and Richard have responsibilities to make sure employees and visitors are accounted for. And in bulk materials, Shane and Tony have responsibilities for shutting down electrical panels. Be aware in the event of an evacuation, we need to meet in that area across the street that was shown in the map earlier. As well, you cannot leave the facility until you've checked in. We need to make sure everyone is out so that we don't send emergency response personnel in looking for somebody that's already evacuated the property. In the same way, if you leave the property, you should let a manager know. So again, we know you're not on the property and we don't send somebody in that risks their life looking for somebody that's not there. Once we've evacuated, here's procedures that Marty and Stan will follow to communicate. We'll communicate with trucks that might be headed back to the plant. We can contact concrete dispatch so we can route Medimix trucks to different facilities to return to, and also building materials drivers we can route to other facilities. We also might have agencies to report to, like the EPA, FBI, depending on the circumstances. Handling the media. If we have a major event that requires an evacuation, such as a fire or an explosion or major chemical spill, the media will show up. As you know, they're looking for stories and they're looking for comments. They may stick a microphone in your face and ask you what happened, what did you see? Our company policy is that only the president or a vice president of the company may speak to the media on behalf of the company. We've had events in the past where media has shown up and they have misquoted employees and not gotten the stories straight. So please decline comment. Only the president and vice president of the company can speak to the media. If you have any questions on this policy, please see Stan, Harley, Terry, or myself, Steve Grau. That concludes the video training. There are a couple questions to answer, and then you'll get credit for this training. Thank you.